We are going to go back in time. It's WCW SUPERBRAWL II. Took place in the Mecca Arena in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in front of 5,000 people. That Mecca Arena also hosted the WWF King of the Ring 1996, where Stone Cold Steve Austin first uttered the Austin 316 said, "I just kicked your ass."
Nice.
Catchphrase. So a classic wrestling building. Pete, how did you find this WCW event, the first of 1992?
Yeah, I just, everything about it was utterly charming. Everything was just a lot of fun. And, you know, Kevin Nash with a smile on his face. What more can you ask
What
for?
more can you ask? I mean, the Rick Rude is there.
Rick Rude is there.
Gives that little opener where he does a kiss to the camera.
Yeah.
And they dub on smack.
smack, smack, smack.
The United States heavyweight title is challenged when ravishing Rick Rude battles Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Even like Eric Bischoff and Tony Schiavone sitting on chairs. I suddenly realised it was only when they're sitting there. I go, you don't see what people sit on very often in wrestling. They work very hard to hide the chairs. And they're just sitting on a couple of chairs looking at each other.
Yeah.
Eric Bischoff immediately kicks this off by getting something wrong. So he says, he's talking about the Arn Anderson-Bobby Eaton match. And he says, I think the Steiners are going to eat their lunch. And you can see Tony Schiavone looks at him and he tries not to sort of go... but he sort of goes. What he means, of course, is he's going to eat them for lunch.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I can't wait for this match. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm from Detroit, Michigan, okay? It has nothing to do with the fact that I think the Steiners are probably the best tag team in WCW history. But I'm going to tell you something, Tony, I think the Steiners are going to eat their lunch. I think we're going to disagree all night because I really...
Eric Bischoff definitely looks at Tony Schiavone like, why are you giving me that look?
It's perfectly
right. Out comes Missy Hyatt.
Missy Hyatt.
Amazing hairspray. She has this total like parabola of hair. Back in the 80s when people were like obsessed with going, what my hair needs is nooks and crannies. Yeah. It needs
roosting spots.
Roosting, seating areas.
Seating areas.
A mezzanine, pouches,
yeah.
The hair pouch.
Yeah.
Anything you could do where you'd go, that hair's not just lying there, but that hair has formed something.
Yeah.
You were the 80s in a nutshell. And Jim Ross brings out, as you say, Jesse Ventura. Here he comes. He tells it like it is, says Jim Ross.
He'll be working with me at ringside tonight. He tells it like it is. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to WCW and SUPERBRAWL II, Jesse the Body Ventura.
There is one problem I do have with Jesse Ventura, who is a fantastic colour commentator, is that disgusting patch of hair on the back of his head. Like Kendo Nagasaki. It's so revolting.
Exactly. He's kind of shaved his entire head, but he's left a dirty little ponytail at the back.
Normally he wears his bandana, and so that hides the fact. If you see hair underneath, you go, well, there must be hair on top too. Because why would you leave a pelt, a rat pelt, just at the back? It is disgusting. He also comes down on a motorbike and let me say one thing. He says, when you're in the US, you ride a Harley Davidson. Really?
Well, you didn't. Yeah, outside, Jesse. Yeah. You do it outside,
There's
Jesse.
a funny bit there as well where he says it, and it's not like a pro-American thing. It is that there's that funny thing about the automobile industry in America was a very legitimised form of Japanese hatred.
Yes.
Where it was, inferior
Japanese
Jap
crap.
cars.
Yeah.
When I was working at Capital Radio and took over with Richard Bacon from
Boom, boom.
Right. And on that desk was stickers.
Right.
And it said, I'd rather my sister was in an American whorehouse than have a brother on a Jap bike.
Right, yeah.
And that was in a very American, he was really into Harleys.
Right.
And it's so funny that as a sort of company, Harley Davidson were like, part of our corporate message is you would rather have your sister in a whorehouse, surely, than have a brother on a Jap bike.
Yeah. Why are you bringing the brother into it? I understand the horrible misogynist idea of like you wouldn't like your sister to do this, would you?
But
why
would,
are you bringing...
I would rather have
I would rather that, yeah.
B, can we stop saying Jap? Because I know it's not actually strictly racist, but I don't think people who are pro-Japanese use it much.
No, and I think it is a bit.
It can only be racist.
It can only be.
Yeah, look, I'm not an expert on Harley Davidson's race relations and what they were doing in the 80s and 90s, but it does seem that most of their brand was going, Japanese people are awful. Jesse Ventura also got a little sand-coloured leather jacket. But the lapels are curling in, aren't they? Curling in.
He's been too close to a 3-bar fire.
He has. Or it's got wet, and he's not pressed it.
Put some dubbing on it. Come on out loud, Jesse.
Got it damp. I like it when leather like that gets damp because it's like it brings it back to life and it goes, I've got to be a skin again. And it starts wrapping. I'm going to wrap around you. The first match that we have is the WCW Light Heavyweight Champion Jushin Thunder Liger versus Flying Brian Pillman. Liger had won the belt from Pillman in December on a Christmas Day show. I bet everyone was overjoyed about that.
Japanese, they don't do it.
One of the funny things is wrestling always had a big history, and I think in America, Christmas Day less important than Thanksgiving. There was always the Survivor Series was the Thanksgiving night tradition, whereby everyone would come out on Thanksgiving night to see the wrestling. On Christmas Day, it was a similar thing. A lot of wrestling throughout history always happened. The big show was on Christmas Day. I don't think it's a bad idea. No. I quite like the idea of going, and now we go out on Christmas afternoon.
Well, I mean, as long as you get your morning. I mean, I can skip the roast dinner, to be quite frank, even though...
It'd be nice to go out and come back, wouldn't it?
It'd be nice to sort of... I think, like, recently when I've sort of been home with my mum and dad, like, my dad goes to the pub, and it's quite nice to get out and then come back and dinner's ready.
Yeah.
I do nothing
true.
for it.
I'd started doing that thing of going to the pub. It is a weird thing where I'd sort of say, why don't we all go to the pub? And my wife would sort of go, I'd rather get on with the dinner. I go, I'll do it and come back. Yeah. She'd be like, oh, no, I'd rather stay here. And then my mum would go, well, I'll stay and help. And then the blokes would all go, let's go then. Three blokes. We go down the pub, it would just be full of other blokes, that sort of thing.
And their dogs.
My dad took pity on someone and he said, look, there's a bloke over there. He said, he's just sitting on his own. I worry he's not going to have a good Christmas. He said, why don't we invite him back? Are you fucking nuts? You're absolutely fucking crazy. Yeah,
that's the sort of thing you hear about people doing and never do yourself. That's nice.
Oh,
isn't
it nice? Are you fucking? Do you want to go to a London pub, find a stranger, and say, "Why don't you go to Mark's house?" Are you fucking crazy? Oh, it's Christmas. Yeah, it's Christmas. Fucking, no one's ever been murdered on Christmas. Jesus. That was the moment I thought about my dad. I thought he's fucking lost it now. Out comes Jushin Liger. He was a big success at this point. He's one of the most famous international wrestlers. But he got over in America largely because you couldn't tell he was Japanese.
Right.
Because he wears that mask, you are like, he is a masked wrestler first and foremost. And what you're not thinking is he's not an American. Always traditionally, Japanese have been the inscrutable bad guys. They've never been pushed. And there was a slight thing about Japanese wrestling as well, because it comes from that sense of personal strength and spectacular athletic ability. It was less about winning over crowds. You won them over through your work. Well, American crowds would often sort of look at it and just go, he must be the bad guy. They're always the bad guys. Right. Having the mask on meant that they could go, oh, he's a spaceman.
He's a weird spaceman.
I like the spaceman. He come all the way from the galaxy to fight for our belt. That is remarkable. WCW still give him music that you would have heard in the Japanese Imperial Court in 1850. It's all that.
And now let's go back to Gary Capetta and the introduction of the champion.
And ladies and gentlemen, his opponent, he hails from Tokyo, Japan. He weighs 212 pounds.
Really annoying. You've got a space Liger.
Yeah.
A thunder space fucking Liger. And you're like, let's give him some
Has to
Imperial.
Be Japanese.
Yeah, so disappointing.
His kit always looks spotless. And it's white. He must have 15 of the fuckers.
Must do.
Incredible.
Must do. The funny thing is, because he's masked as well, he never aged in his career.
Yeah.
He changed his style over the years. He went to mat-based work and then became a legend where he had to do less to get over. Drops a lot of the high flying. But you forget how liberating being a masked wrestler must be. Because he is a 60-year-old squat Japanese man. And you would sit opposite him on the tube and you wouldn't know it was Jushin Liger.
You could hear the music though, couldn't you?
It would be good if when he took the mask off, that was the shape of his head. Long, fleshy horns.
Oh, no.
Shocking.
Well, Jesse at one point does sort of go, the Liger reminds me of the Predator, who I fought in 1987.
Liger, when I look at that headgear, he reminds me of the Predator when I had to fight him back in 87.
Flyin Brian catching Liger, takes him down. Head scissors by Flyin Brian. And the drop kick. Liger on the outside.
Like I said, he reminds me of the Predator.
It's like, Jesse, mate,
Amazing.
give it just 5 years ago.
Get yourself over.
That year, he was in the film Ricochet with Denzel Washington, John Lithgow and Ice-T. Mention that. He was Jake Chewalski, a prison inmate and an Aryan Brotherhood member. Mention that.
Hey, it reminds me of the time I was an Aryan Brotherhood member. In a film.
Like the Japanese in the film. Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, whatever. At the time, you cannot overstress as well this match, how we had never seen anything like it. When Jushin Liger was wrestling in Japan, everyone was like, he's invented a new form of wrestling. And if you weren't a tape trader or you weren't sort of able to see it in Japan, you had never seen it until he came to WCW and had this match with Flying Brian Pillman. The easiest way to sort of give it some sort of placement is to say that in WWF at this time, a month before this show, Ric Flair has won the Royal Rumble for the title. And in 2 months' time, the main event of WrestleMania 8 will be Hulk Hogan versus Sid Justice. And you have this match happening in the middle. You suddenly realise that when they're in the character era of WWE, where it's all Repo Man and IRS and the Warlord, you've got these two coming out and putting on a spectacle that no one has ever seen before. It was the fastest, slickest, most exciting, most daredevil match that anyone had ever seen. It was just, it's still 18 years later, 19 years later, you can watch this and just go, that is a really, really good match that is timeless. But at the time, to see that, it was... I'd read about it for months in the wrestling magazines. So the wrestling magazines came out about 4 months after these things happened. And then the videos came out about a year after that. Jeez. And I'd read about this in the wrestling magazines, about how amazing it was. And when I saw the video finally after 18 months, it took my breath away. I was like, nobody prepared me for how good it was. You watch it now and you go, this is stuff that everyone does. But pretty much all of the stuff in this match, you'd never seen before. That thing of just jumping out the ring onto someone, that was holy shit. What just happened there? And they do that within the first few minutes, and then it keeps going and it keeps going. It's also brilliant because it's not a spot fest. It's a really good back and forth, sensible. They both look like they're trying to win. The whole thing is just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful match. There are a series of 2 counts that the crowd are just crazy for, and it flies by. You feel like it started and it's over, and I know time's passed, but that could have been 3 minutes, it could have been 20. I have no idea, because it was just beautiful. So lovely. One of those matches, I think that, if I was going to do a top 100, that's in the 20s easily. And if I'd have written it, in 1992, that would have been probably number 4. There was nothing like it. And you will be pleased to hear that they received the $2,500 bonuses for their work from Kip Fry. Not the only ones. He decided to be very generous in the show.
That's very
not everyone got them. Made it sound like everyone was going to get one. Not everyone did.